Till now we discussed part 1 economy, and in this part 2 we are going to discuss agriculture and the food economy for GS Mains 2026 3 2026 GS 3 revision marathon. So in this we are going to discuss 6A, 6B, 7, 8 and 11 chapters. We are going to discuss total 52 PYQs in this particular lecture. So, what is the arc of part 2 we are going to discuss? In this, I already told you 5 chapters. That is chapter 6a, we are going to discuss what is grown, and chapter 6b, what it is grown with, and chapter 7, what it bought for, and chapter 8, what it is made up of it, and chapter 11, who owns the land. So these are all the chapters. Comes to chapter 6a, what is grown? The production system diversification has already happened, policy has not followed. Comes to 6b, what it grown with, that is water, technology, sustainability, the binding constraint on everything in 6a. Then we are moving to chapter number 7, what it is bought for, that is price, purchase, storage, distribution, distortion, and the largest chapter in this set, this chapter number 7. And comes to chapter number 8. In this we are going to discuss processing and supply chains, that is food processing and supply chains. The loss happens between the farm and the factory. And the final chapter, that is chapter number 11. In this we are going to discuss land reforms, and the title problems, the chapter that explains why the others under delivered. So in this arc, first and foremost, what is grown, then what it is grown with, and what it is bought for, and what it is made up of it, and who owns the land it grew on. Every chapter hands a problem to the next one. So this is regarding agriculture and food economy. We are going to discuss the chapter number 6a, that is agriculture transformation, the production system. What is the agriculture transformation and what is the production system? In this particular chapter, UPSC asked many questions in previous years. For example, 2025 question, UPSC asked factors in selecting high value crops. 2023 asked cropping pattern, consumption, marketing, and 2020 asked rice wheat system and success and Bain. 18 asked National Horticulture Mission, and 17 asked declining rice and wheat yields, and again 17 asked revolutions in agriculture, and 2016 asked allelopathy. So these are the questions asked from the particular chapter in UPSC CSE GS paper 3 as far as agriculture is concerned. So what is the paradox here? What is the paradox? India grows more fruit and vegetables than it grows grain. India grows more fruit and vegetables than it grows grain. And the minimum support price covers not one horticulture crop. Minimum support price covers not one horticultural crop. That is the transformation this chapter is about, and the policy architecture has not caught up with it. And then we are moving to scene number 2, that is the structural picture. What is the structural picture? Land use 2023-2024, geographical area 3,28,755 hectares, net zone area 1,38,992 hectares, and total cropped area 2,17,882 hectares, up 65.2% since 1950 to 51. When it was 1,31,893, and cropping intensity 156.8%. 156.8%. So read the last together. Net sown area has barely moved in 70 years. Total cropped area rose 65%. Almost the entire increase came from the cropping the same land more often, not from cropping more land. That is what irrigation bought India, and it is why water in the next chapter is the binding constraint on everything here. And agriculture's weight in the economy 8.4% of gross value added at current prices in 2022-23 against 43% of the workforce on PLFS 2025 usual status. That gap, that gap roughly 43% of workers producing roughly 18% of output is the productivity problem in one line. It is also the number to open almost any agriculture answer with. So the what is the diversification that already happened? The 2025 question asked what makes a farmer choose a high value crop. The 2023 and 2018 questions asked about cropping pattern change, same subject, and the data has already answered it. Horticulture 29.49 million hectares, 369.0 million tons, and the third advance estimated third advance estimates for 2024 and 2025 area up 25.96%, 25.96%, and output up 31.34% over a decade. Say advance estimate and the food grains comes to the food grains 132.36 millions, 132.36 million hectares, 392.22 million tons yield. Yield how much? 2487 kilogram per hectare. From agriculture statistics at a glance 2024 and 2025 we picked this. Horticulture output is now of the same order as food grain output and roughly a fifth of the area. That formulation is unarguable. So what drives the switch to high value crops? The 2025 answer is 6 factors. The first one is returns per hectare. Horticulture yields substantially higher grass value per unit of area. And the second one, assured irrigation. High value crops are water sensitive and cannot be attempted on rain fed land without risk. And third one, market access and distance. Perishables need a road, a buyer, and a cold chain within hours. And fourth one, post harvest infrastructure. Without storage, a good harvest becomes a price collapse. And the fifth one, price risk. Price risk and absence of floor. Food grains have MSP and procurement horticulture has neither. And sixth one, holding size and credit. Diversification requires working capital before it produces income. The asymmetry that makes this a policy question. So farmers have diversified faster than policy has. Output has shifted toward horticulture, while the entire price support, procurement, and buffer architecture remains built around rice and wheat. So the consequence should be like this: the crops the state supports are not the crops that raise incomes, and the crops that raise incomes carry all the price risk. So the sentence answers the 2025 question, the 2023 question, and half of chapter 7. And the next scene, that is the rice wheat trap. What is the right? What is the rice and wheat trap? The 2020 question asked why the rice wheat system was a success and how it became a bane. The 2017 question asked about declining yields. Answer them as one. I answer them as one. Why it succeeded? High yielding varieties, assured irrigation, guaranteed procurement at MSP, and a subsidized fertilizer, and a near free power for pumping. Every element pointed the same way, and the system delivered national food security within a generation. That was the point, and it worked. Why it became a bane? Four mechanisms, each the flip side of a success factor. The first one is groundwater. Groundwater. Assured irrigation meant pumping. Free power removed the price signal on water. And then soil. Continuous cereal monoculture with skewed nutrients degraded soil health and flattened the yield response. And third one is regional concentration. Procurement locked a few states in and left others outside. And fourth one, crop mix lock in. A farmer facing guaranteed offtake for rice and no floor for anything else behaving rationally by not diversifying. The distortion is not the farmer's choice, it is the incentive structure the farmer faces. Say it twice. The distortion is not farmer's choice, it is the incentive structure the farmer faces. And declining yields, the 2017 question, the response to additional inputs falls as soil organic carbon depletes and the nutrient ratio skews. Crop diversification stabilizes yield by breaking pest and disease cycles, restoring nitrogen through legumes, and spreading weather risk across crops with different water and temperature profiles. On allelopathy, the 2016 question, and this is the whole answer. What is allelopathy? Allelopathy is the release of biochemicals by one plant that inhibits the germinator or growing of another. Allelopathy is what? Allelopathy is the release of biochemicals by one plant that inhibits the germination or growth of another. In irrigated cropping systems, it matters in two directions. As a problem, where crop residues suppress the following crop in a rotation, and as a tool, where allelopathic cover crops and rotations, suppress weeds and reduce herbicides dependence. So do not write more than 3 sentences on it. It is a definitional question wearing a systems costume. And the revolutions, the 2017 question, one line each, no more. Green for food grains, white or milk, Operation Flood, yellow oil seeds, blue fisheries, pink meat and poultry, golden horticulture and honey, silver eggs. So these are all the revolutions. Green for what? Food grains. White for what? Milk. Operation Flood. Yellow for what? Oil seeds. Blue for what? Fisheries. Pink for what? Meat and poultry. Golden horticulture and honey. Golden horticulture and honey. Silver for what? Eggs. Their common contribution was production security. Their common omission was what? Distributional and ecological consequence. That contrast is the answer. So Indian agriculture has already diversified. Indian agriculture policy has not. So the water technology and substantially and sustainability, half of that argument continues in chapter 6b. So what is the chapter 6b we are going to discuss? That is water technology and sustainability. These are all three fill slots closed from CGWB 2025 PM-KISY release. So this owns PYQs. This chapter owns PYQs. Look at that PYQs. 2024 asked two questions. One question, irrigation challenges and measures, and the second one, millets and nutritional security. And 2023 asked e-technology in production and marketing. And 2022 asked integrated farming system. 21 asked again two questions. First one, micro irrigation and the water crisis, and the second one, emerging technologies and diversification. And 2020 asked water storage and judicious use. Judicious use. And 2020 again asked water storage and judicious use. And 29 again asked two questions. IFS and sustaining production, National Watershed Project, National Watershed Project, and 2018 asked the cropping pattern and millets, and 2016 asked water usage, water use efficiency, and 2015 asked Digital India for farmers. Look at the questions. How many questions asked? You have to understand the importance of this particular chapter with these questions. UPSC asked again and again. 24 two questions. 2024 they asked two questions. 2021 they again asked two questions. And 2019 again asked two questions. These are the questions increasing. So you have to understand the importance of this particular chapter, that is water, technology and sustainability. So what is the paradox here? Water, the binding constraint. Four questions live in this scene, that is 2024 on irrigation challenges, 2021 on micro irrigation, 2020 on water storage, 2016 on water use efficiency. Sources of irrigation 2023-24 as a share of net irrigated area, tube wells 48%, other wells 15%, canals 21%, tanks 4%, and other sources 12%. So groundwater, tube wells, tube wells plus other wells is is about 63% of India's net irrigated area. Look at the tube wells 48% and other wells 15%. So these together 63% of India's net irrigated area, integrated net irrigated area. India does not primarily irrigate from dams and canals. It irrigates from wells, privately owned, individually operated, drawing on a common pool resource no individual user has any incentive to conserve. So the 2024 answer, challenges in order of severity. The first one is the sources is common pool. The sources is common pool and the extraction is private. Regulating millions of extraction points is an enforcement problem, not a policy design problem. And second one is the price. The price, the price signal is switched off. The price signal is switched off. Free or heavily subsidized power means the marginal cost of pumping approaches zero and no conservation technology overcome a zero marginal cost. And third one, canal systems underperform their design. Conveyance losses, tail end deprivation, deferred maintenance, and fourth one is storage is limited and salination. Storage is limited and siltation continuously. Then comes to the fifth one, that is crop choice and water availability are misaligned because the price and procurement signals point that way. Comes to watershed management and watershed development, The 2019 question, it is supply side treatment of the catchment like contour munding, check dams, farm ponds, recharge structures, and measurable outcomes are increased cropping intensity, a second crop where there was one, and reduce distress migration. The limitation is that benefits are hydrologically local and depend on community maintenance after the project period ends. So, what is the groundwater assessment? According to CGWB 2025, National Compilation on Dynamic Groundwater Resources of India 2025 released on November 2025. The CGWB 2025 annual recharge 448.52 billion cubic meters annual recharge, and annual extraction 247.22, stage of extraction 60.63% of 60 of 6760 62 6762 6762 total assessment units over exploited 730, which is 10.80%, and critical 201 2.97%, semi-critical 758 11.21%, saline 127 1.88%, and safe 4946 73.14%. Agriculture share of extraction is 87%, and the figure comes from the annual groundwater quality report 2024, a different publication. So you have to attribute it separately, or say roughly 7/8 micro irrigation covers 110.92 lakh hectares, that is 7.98% of net zone area. So three holdings and three findings, and each is computation rather than a quotation. What is the three? What are those three? And the first one, the national average is itself a safe unit. India's stage of extraction is 60.63%. The safe threshold is below 70. So if India were assessed as a single block, it would be classified safe, while 730 of its blocks extract more than they recharge. Groundwater stress is not an aggregate problem. It is a distributional one, and the national number conceals it completely. Now add the stressed categories. Overexploited plus critical plus semi-critical is 1689 units. And stressed units, that is 24.98%. About a quarter of assessment units are stressed, not the 10.8% figure alone. And the second one, the two halves of the data set point opposite directions. Overexploited units are falling 1186 in 2017 to 730 in 2025. 730 in 2025, a 21-year low. But absolute extraction has for risen 4 years running. 239 billion cubic meters in 2022 to 247.22 in 2025, the highest since 2013. Both are true. Categorization is a ratio within each unit. So extraction can rise where headroom exists while falling in stressed blocks. So state the improvement, then the state that aggregate extraction is at a 12-year high. And third one is and this rewrites the rebound argument. What is the rebound argument? Of 448.52 billion cubic meters of recharge, rainfall supplies 269.17, 60%. The others 179.33, 40% comes from canal seepage, return flow from irrigation and tanks and ponds. So improving irrigation efficiency reduces recharge Lining a canal removes the seepage. So drip removes the return flow. This sits underneath the rebound effect and is stronger because it operates even if farmer behavior never changes. So handle it carefully. Handle that carefully. It is not an argument against micro irrigation, and the report does not make one. The defensible claim is that field level water use, efficiency, and basin level water availability are different quantities and must be measured separately. Comes to the micro irrigation, the 2021 and 2016 questions, drip and sprinkler raise water use efficiency, output per unit water applied by delivering water the root zone, but efficiency at the plot does not guarantee saving the basin. When a farmer's water cost, when a farmer's water cost, when a farmer's water cost fall, the rational response is to expand irrigated area or switch to the thirstier crop. So water saved per hectare is consumed by more hectares. That is the rebound effect. And it is why micro irrigation must be paid with a price signal or an extraction limit. So very few candidates will write that sentence and the scale check. Micro irrigation covers 7.98% of net zone area. About 92% is not under it. Micro irrigation only 7.98% of net zone area. Net zone area. After a decade, it cannot yet be the binding instrument on national extraction. Target it at the 1689 stressed units, not uniformly, which is precisely that CGWG categorization exists for. So the three geographies, what are the three geographies? Three instruments. The best structural answer to 2024, that is the northwest Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, west Uttar Pradesh, and resource abundant withdrawals, indiscriminate, a demand problem. The west, Rajasthan, Gujarat, arid, recharge itself limited, a supply problem. The south peninsular, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, crystalline aquifers inherently low availability, a geology problem. Punjab needs cropping change and pricing, Rajasthan needs recharge and storage, Karnataka needs aquifer specific management, because you cannot recharge what will not hold water. A single national groundwater policy is answering three different questions at once. So PM-KISY, the naming trap, three layers deep. The what is the full name? First one is PM-KISY, two entirely different schemes, that is Pradhana Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana, which is a food processing and belongs to the chapter 8, and Pradhana Mantri Krushi Sinchai Yojana, which is irrigation and belongs here. So second one PDMC left PM-KISY. It was a component from 2015-16 to 2021-22 and has been under PMRKVY from 22 to 23. So micro irrigation under PM-KISY is wrong for any recent year. Third one is WDC PM-KISY. The watershed component is administered by the Department of Land Resource, a different ministry. So then PM-KISY itself launched 1st July 2015, continuation approved for 2021 to 2026 at 93,680 crore, 680.5656 crore, 6,587 crore in budget 2026-27, and 64,407 crore delivered to 27 million farmers across to 24.61 million hectares to August 2025. Components, what are the components? AIBP, HKKP, watershed development, and PDMC. Four names and move on. So I am going to deliver three computed findings with ease. I am repeating again. The first one is the national level average itself a safe unit. Why? India's stage of extraction is 60.63%, The safe threshold is below 70%. So if India were assessed as a single block, it would be classified as safe. While 730 while 730 of its blocks extract more than they recharge. So groundwater stress in India is not an aggregate problem. Groundwater stress in India is not an aggregate problem. It is a distributional one, and the national number conceals it completely. So second computed finding is the two halves of the data set point in opposite directions. How and why? Overexploited units are falling from 1186 in 2017 to 730 in 2025, a 21-year low, from 1186 in 2017 to 730 in 2025. But absolute extraction has risen 4 years running, 239 BCM in 2022 to 247.22 in 2025, the highest since 2013. Both are true. Categorization is a ratio within each unit. So extraction can rise where headroom exists while falling in stressed blocks. And the third computed finding is two-fifths of recharge comes from irrigation inefficiency. Two-fifths two-fifth, two-fifths of recharge comes from irrigation inefficiency. Of 448.52 BCM of recharge, rainfall supplies 269.17 BCM. So with rainfall supply 60%. So the other 179.33 BCM, which consists 40%, comes from canal seepage. Comes from where? Canal seepage. So return flow from irrigation and tanks and ponds. So improving irrigation efficiency reduces recharge. Lining a canal removes seepage. Drip removes return flow. So these are the three findings computed. The first one, the national average itself a safe unit, and the second one, the two halves of a data set point is opposite directions, and the third one is two-fifths of recharge comes from irrigation efficiency. So you have to be understand and hold these three computed findings as far as your examination is concerned. And comes to the micro irrigation part, the 2021 and 2026 questions asked regarding micro irrigation. Actually, what is micro irrigation and what we are going to discuss? The analytical upgrade the examiner has not yet been given. So you have to do not say like this, like drip and sprinkler save water. So expanding micro irrigation will solve the groundwater crisis. Water use efficiency at the plot equals water saved in the basin. And micro irrigation is the binding instrument of national extraction. You do not say like this. You have to say like this. Water, drip and sprinkler raise water use efficiency. Drip and sprinkler raise water use efficiency. Output per unit of water applied by delivering water to the root zone. But efficiency at the plot does not guarantee saving in the basin. When a farmer's water cost falls, the rational response is to expand irrigated area or switch to 30th crop. What is the 30th crop? Let's say rice, example, sugarcane. So water saved per hectare is consumed by more hectares. That is the rebound effect, and it is why micro irrigation must be paid with a price signal or an extraction limit. You have to say like this or write like this. So micro irrigation covers 7.98% of net zone area across country. So about remaining 92% is not under it, where under not under micro irrigation. So after a decade it cannot yet be the binding instrument on national extraction. So target it at the only 1689 stressed units and not uniformity. This is you are going to write, for example, for 2021 and 2016 questions. So then we are moving to the next one, that is PMKSY. What is PMKSY? PMKSY is two. First one is Pradhana Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana and Pradhana Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana. What we are discussing here is Pradhana Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, for because it is irrigation. So you have to understand and you have to be aware and be careful regarding the naming trap, that is PMKSY. So three layers deep. So what are the three layers? So you have to write PMKSY. Simply not PMKSY. You have to write full name like Pradhana Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana or Pradhana Mantri Krishi Kisan Sampada Yojana. So there are two and different sectors relating to, like Krishi Sinchai Yojana irrigation and Kisan Sampada Yojana food processing. So you have to be very careful and be aware at while writing an answer in the examination. So three ways to get it wrong. What are the ways? One, writing PMKSY alone. You don't have to write like that. It two entirely different schemes. Micro irrigation under PMKSY for any recent year, PDMS left PMKSY. It was component from 2015-16 to 21-22 and sits under PMRKPY from 22 to 23. And the third one is assuming one ministry runs all of it. WDC PMKSY. The watershed component is administered by the Department of Land Resources. So you have to be very, very careful from these things. And what you have to write is the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana for irrigation in this chapter and the Pradhana Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana for food processing, chapter number 8. You have to write the full name every time in the answers, never the acronym alone in the examination. So comes to the components part, AIBP and HKKP, watershed development, PDMC, our names, what names, four names, and moved on. Comes to PMKSY, that is Krishi Sinchai Yojana itself, launched 1st July 2015. Continuation approved for 2021 to 2016, 26 with 93,680 93,068.56 crores. In that 6,587 crore in budget 2026-27. Then 64,407 crore delivered to 27 million farmers across 24.61 million hectares to August 2025. So this is regarding PDMS and PMKSY, etc. So then we are moving to the next scene, that is IFS, that is integrated farming system. What are the integrated farming systems? Asked twice in 2019 and 2022, and both times about smallholders. What it is actually? Deliberately combining crops with one or more of livestock. That is integrated farming systems. So deliberately combining crops with one or more of livestock, poultry, poultry, fishery, horticulture, agroforestry, and apiculture on the same land holding. Same holding, so that The output or waste of one enterprise becomes the input of another. Crop residue feeds livestock, manure fertilizers the crop, pond silt enriches the field, trees provide fodder and fuel. Why it suits small and marginal farmers? For four reasons: income spread across the year rather than two harvest payments, risk diversification, so crop failure does not mean zero income, input substitution, science, input substitution since on farm nutrient cycling reduces cash expenditure, which matters most to the farmer with at least working capital, with the least working capital, and labor absorption through the year rather than seasonally. And comes to the honest limit. What is the honest limit? IFS, that is integrated farming management, integrated farming system, is management intensive. It demands more knowledge, more continuous attention, and more initial capital than monocropping. It is not a low effort solution for the poorest. It is a high skill solution that pays best where extension support exists. So you have to say that the answer stops sounding like a brochure. So then we are moving to, this is all about integrated farming systems. And then we are moving to technology. Technology and the adaptation gap or adoption gap. Three questions here. The 2023 question asked how e-technology helps in production and marketing. The 2015 question asked the same about digital India. And the 2021 question asked how emerging technologies enable diversification. So structure the answer by function. Structure the answer by function, not by scheme name. So before sowing, you have to structure the answer by what? Function, not by scheme name alone. Before sowing, soil health information, weather advisory, variety selection, credit assessment, and comes to the during season. During the season, pest and disease advisory, irrigation scheduling, satellite and drone based monitoring, precision input application, and comes to the at harvest time. Harvest time what? Yield estimation and crop cutting experiments for insurance settlement, and comes to the after harvest price discovery, electronic trading, warehouse receipts, direct benefit transfer. So the diversification link, the 2021 question wanted. Technology reduces the information and risk barriers to switching crops. So a farmer will not plant an unfamiliar high value crop without an agronomic package, a weather forecast, a buyer, and an insurance product. Digital tools supply all four more cheaply than extension officers can. So the adoption gap is the answer, not the technology. So every one of these tools exists in India at national scale. The binding constraint is not availability, the adoption. And adoption fails for identifiable reasons. Smartphone and connectivity gaps that track income and gender, advisories issued in the wrong language or the wrong literacy level, generic recommendations and that do not match the specific plot, and absence of a follow through market, so the advice cannot be acted on, and the simple fact that a farmer will not act on a forecast that has been wrong before. So that is why these problems arise and happening. So comes to the formulation. What is the formulation? The India's agricultural technology problem is a last mile problem, and the last mile is what? Trust, not bandwidth. India's agricultural technology problem is a last mile problem, and the last mile is trust, not bandwidth. Then comes to millets and the sustainability turn. The 2024 question asked about millets for health and nutritional security. The 2018 question asked about the emphasis on millets within cropping pattern change. Why millets? Why? Why? On four grounds: nutrition, high fiber, micronutrient, and protein density than polished rice, and a low glycemic index, which matters given India's diabetes burden. And second one is water, substantially lower requirement than paddy, the single strongest argument in a groundwater constrained system. And third one is climate resilience, tolerant of heat, drought and marginal soils, viable on rain fed land where paddy is not. And fourth one is regional equity, grown predominantly in dryland and tribal regions, the green revolution largely bypassed. So these are four reasons. What are the four reasons? Nutrition, water, climate resilience, and regional equity. So what is the honest constraint set which most answers omit? What is that? Consumer demand is the binding limit, not production capacity. Millets carry a persistent perception as a coarse or poverty grain. Processing is harder, dehulling, and the shelf life are genuine technical constraints. Procurement and PDS inclusion remain thin relative to rice and wheat, and the yield per hectare is lower. So, a farmer switching from paddy to millet without a price or procurement guarantee takes an income cut for a public benefit. And here is the analytical core, that is the millet argument is a public goods argument dressed as nutrition argument. The water saved and the climate resilience gained accrue to society. The yield and income forgone accrue to the farmer. Until procurement, price, and demand close that gap, promotion campaigns will move consumption at the margin and cropping patterns hardly at all. So that connects directly to chapter 7's MSP architecture. So efficiency is not conservation. Efficiency is not conservation. India has spent a decade rising output per drop, and the drop is still leaving the aquifer. So this is all regarding about the particular water technology and sustainability and millets, etc. So then we are moving to the chapter number 7, that is MSP, procurement, food security, and the price regime. The compression is the framing. 17 questions collapse into 5 systems. These are the 5 systems. The PYQs 2024 asked buffer stocks, again 2024 asked food inflation and RBI, and 2023 asked direct and indirect subsidies WTO, 2022 PDS challenges, 21 NFSA National Food Security Act, 19 distribution reform, 18 MSP and low income trap, and 17 crop insurance, and again 17 subsidy distortion, 16 crop insurance, 2016 asked crop insurance, and again next year 2017 asked crop insurance. So 2015 DBT for price subsidy, DBT, and 2015 livestock, 2014 APMCs, and 2014 agriculture credit, and 2013 subsidy distortion, and again 2013 pink revolution. So look at the questions asked. 2017 asked 2 questions, 2013 asked 2 questions. Look at the questions asked. What is the paradox here? India has price support. India has a price support system, a procurement system, a buffer stock, and the largest food distribution program on the earth. So, and it still has both food price instability and low farmer incomes. A system that guarantees a price to the farmer and a grain to the consumer should not leave the farmer poor. So, understanding why it does this chapter, understanding why it does is this chapter, and here is how to hold 17 questions in your head. 5 systems: price, that is MSP; purchase, that is procurement; storage, that is buffer; distribution, that is NFSA and the PDS; and distortion, that is subsidy, the WTO, and the cropping pattern. You have to go through 5 systems and the question fall out of them. And then we are moving to next scene, that is MSP, what it is and who actually gets it. MSP is announced for 22 mandated crops, 14 kharif, 6 rabi and 2 commercial crops, jute and copra. The Union Budget 2018-19 announced the principle of setting MSP at 1.5 times the cost of production, delivering a return of at least 50% over the all India weighted average cost of production. So now the cost concepts, and there are three. What are those three? A2. A2 is actual paid out of out costs like seeds, fertilizers, hired labor, fuel, irrigation. And A2 plus FL. A2 plus FL adds the imputed value of unpaid family labor, and the and that is the basis on which the 1.5 times formula is applied. Then C2 is comprehensive. It adds imputed rent on owned land and imputed interest on owned capital. So the Swaminathan Commission's recommendation was 50% over C2. The governance formula is 50% over A2 plus FL. So since C2 exceeds A2 plus FL, the two produce materially different to minimum support prices. So you have to write this, not that. Never write MSP is 1.5 times the cost of production without naming the cost concept. So that single omission is the most common error in MSP answers. And naming A2 plus FL against C2 is often worth the difference between an average and a good score. The 2018 question, MSP is a price instrument. Farm income is price times quantity marketed minus cost. MSP is a price instrument. What? MSP is a price instrument. Farm income is price times quantity marketed minus cost. MSP therefore rescues a farmer only if three conditions hold simultaneously. The farmer grows a crop that is procured, not merely one, with an announced MSP. The farmer has a marketable surplus, since a subsistence farmer selling little grains, little from a higher price, and the farmer can reach a procurement center because announcement without infrastructure is announcement only. What is the honest verdict? MSP an effective floor for a minority of farmers growing a minority of crops in a minority of states, and a signal with no cash value for everyone else. Income support has the alternative route. PM-KISAN has released more than 4.09 lakh crores across 21 installments since inception, and is allocated 63,500 crore in budget estimates 2026 to 2027. Flat for a third consecutive year. Pradhana Mantri Kisan Mandan Yojana had 24.92 lakh farmers enrolled as of 31 December 2025. Pradhana Mantri Kisan pays a farmer for being a farmer, irrespective of crop, price, surplus, or state. It is decoupled from production, which makes it more equitable in reach and not coincidentally less trade distorting under WTO rules. So you have to hold that for scene number 7. So procurement and its concentration. So we are going to discuss this. We discussed so far this. Does MSP rescue farmers from the low income trap? So MSP is a price instrument simply. Farm income is price times quantity marketed. Price times quantity marketed minus cost. MSP therefore rescues a farmer only if three conditions hold simultaneously. The farmer grows a crop that is procured, not merely on that has an announced MSP. So the farmer has a marketable surplus, Since a subsistence farmer selling little gains little from a higher price, and the farmer can reach a procurement center because announcement without infrastructure is announcement only. So honest verdict here is MSP an effective floor for a minority of farmers growing a minority of crops in a minority of states, and a signal with no cash value for everyone else. The alternate route here is PM-KISAN. PM-KISAN released more than 4.09 lakh crores across 21 installments. So 63,500 crore budget estimations, that is PM-KISAN Mandan, and PM-KISAN pays a farmer being a farmer. So then we are moving to next scene, that is procurement, the gap between announced and received. The gap between MSPs announced and MSPs received is procurement. Two concentrations define the system. Crop concentration. Procurement is overwhelmingly rice and wheat. Pulses, oilseeds, and coarse cereals are procured in small quantities relative to output. Despite carrying announced MSP's geographic concentration, a handful of states with dense procurement infrastructure, mandi storage, and an established relationship with FCI account for a disproportionate share of what is bought. So the circularity, most answer misses. Procurement infrastructure was built where the Green Revolution succeeded. Farmers in those states then rationally continued growing procured crops. Continued production justified continued procurement infrastructure. The pattern is self-reinforcing, which is why it has survived every diversification policy aimed at it. Breaking it requires either extending procurement to new crops and regions, fiscally expensive and operationally hard, or replacing price support with the decoupled income support, which is the PM-KISAN direction. So naming that as a choice between two strategies rather than listing steps taken is the analytical move. So now the concentration in numbers, rice procurement 575.88 lakh metric tons in 2021 to 2022, 559.26 in 2024 to 2025. 2025 marketing season. Then wheat in 2024 to 2025, 300.35, 300.35 lakh metric tons. Rice and wheat together, about 860 lakh tons, and coarse grains 17.18 lakh metric tons. Coarse grains are 2% of what is procured as rice and wheat. And of the 300.35 lakh tons of wheat, state agencies procured 280.63 and FCI 19.72, a 93 to 7 split. 93 to 7 split. FCI 7%, 93% state agencies. So decentralized procurement is now the norm, which matters for any answers on center state roles in food management. And the geography, rice in 2024-2025 in lakh tons, Punjab 116.13, Punjab 116.13, Chhattisgarh 78, Telangana 71.25, Odisha 58.17, Uttar Pradesh 38.66, Haryana 36.17, Bihar 26.28, Andhra Pradesh 25.60, West Bengal 19.91. So look at the look at the rice procurement by state and its geographic concentration. So first one is Punjab 116.13, Chhattisgarh 78, Telangana 71.25, Odisha 58.17. Three states supply 47.5% of rice procurement. Three states. Five supply 64.8%. So, what is the buffer stocks? The 2024 question asked why buffer stock matter for price stabilization and what makes storage difficult. Two halves. Why buffer stocks stabilize prices? The mechanism stated properly, a buffer performs two opposite operations at two different moments. It absorbs surplus at harvest when price would otherwise collapse and hurt the producer. It releases stock in the lean season or during a shortfall when prices would otherwise spike and hurt the consumer, producer as well as consumer in two different situations. So the buffer is a price band instrument, not a stockpile. Its function is to compress the range between the harvest tough and the lean season peak. What makes storage difficult? Six constraints in order. First one, physical loss. Moisture, pests, rodents, fungal damage worst in open and covered and plinth storage. The second one, capacity distribution. Storage sits where grain is procured, not where it is consumed. Third one, carrying cost. Interest on the value of stock plus storage and handling accrues every month. Fourth one, quality degradation over time. Fifth one, stocks above norm. Holding more than the buffer requires converts a stabilization instrument into a fiscal liability. And sixth one is disposal rigidity. Releasing surplus depresses the open market price the system is trying to support. So these are six constraints. And the design tension underneath all six, the buffers problem is that it two jobs conflict. Procuring generously at MSP supports the farmer and builds stock. Releasing generously supports the consumer and depletes it. A system that does both fully accumulates grain. It cannot dispose of without undoing its own price support. That is a design tension, not an administrative failure. And saying so is the answer. Now the norms in million tons, and these have been forced since January 2015. January 2015. So they are not a current year decision. On 1st April, 21.04 in total. On 1st July, 41.12. On 1st October, 30.77. On 1st January, 21.41. Each of those is operational. Rice plus operational, wheat plus 2 million tons of strategic rice and 3 of strategic wheat. The norm peaks on 1st July after the Rabi harvest and falls its lowest on 1st January. A buffer is meant to breathe with the crop cycle. And here is what is actually held on 1st January in lakh tons 2023, that is 298.22 lakh metric tons. 2024 347.06, 25 40 476.85, 26 January 280 584.66, 584.66 against 1st January norm of 214.1. So the sharpest figure in this chapter, India's central pool holds 584.66 lakh tons against 1st January buffer norm is 214.1, 2.73 times the requirement, 370 lakh tons above it, and rising every year for 4 years. The buffer has stopped functioning as a stabilization instrument and started functioning as an accumulation. Carrying cost, carrying cost, storage occupancy, and quality degradation all scale within the excess, and the excess cannot be released at speed without depressing the very prices the procurement system exists to support. So you have to say which norm you are comparing to. The 1st January norm is the year's lowest. Stock composition on 1st January 2026, peat 274.63, rice 309.38, nutri cereals 0.65, nutri cereals 0.65, and storage capacity FCA 481.52 lakh ton plus state agencies 449.00, giving 930.52 lakh tons of covered capacity. So the release value and why it is not enough. The open market sales scheme domestic allows FCI to sell excess central pool stock at predetermined reserve prices with four objectives: offload excess stock, reduce carrying cost, enhance lean season and deficit region supply, and moderate open market prices. The 2025-26 policy was issued in July 2025 and a committee of secretaries recommendation and runs to 30 June 2026. But OMSS is bound by its own logic. Sell aggressively and the open market price falls, undercutting MSP and the reducing the incentive to procure. Sell cautiously and the stock keeps building. That is the design. Tension above expressed as an operating decision taken every chapter. Then we are moving to PDS, NFCA, NFSA, and the digital rebuild. Three questions here: 2021, 22, and 2019. Three questions. Three questions on PDS. Three questions here: 2021 on the National Food Security Act, 22 on PDS challenges, 19 on distribution reform, and the honest answer to all three has changed materially in the last 5 years. The architecture. The National Food Security Act 2013 guarantees subsidized food grains to nearly 67% of the population. 75% rural and 50% urban. About 81.35 crore beneficiaries on 2011 census figures. On 2011 census figures, it is the basis of the exclusion critic in a movement. The lineage is universal PDS, then targeted PDS in 1997, splitting BPL and APL. Then Antyodaya Anna Yojana in 2000, now about 2.5 crore households. Then NFSA in 2013, then PMGKAY launched as COVID relief and continued free to all NFSA beneficiaries and fully center funded with about 78.9 crore receiving free food grains as of October 2025. And food subsidy is 2.2 lakh 27,629 crore in budget estimates 2026-2027, of which PMGKAY Prime Minister Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana alone is 2 lakh 27,429 crore, effectively the entire food subsidy. So now the digital rebuild, and this is what changes in 2022 answer. One nation, one ration card is operational across all 36 states and union territories. Other seeding stands 99.8% of ration cards and 98.9% of beneficiaries. 99.6% of 5.43 lakh fair price shops are an electronic point of sale devices with biometric authentication. Over 98% of monthly distribution is now digital. Inter-database integration across CBDT, GSTN, and PM-KISAN flagged 8.51 crore records and field verification removed over 2.1 crore ineligible beneficiaries. Anna Chakra route optimization runs across 31 states and union territories, saving about 250 crore of transport cost a year, with distance down up to 50% and carbon dioxide up to 35. And GPS vehicle tracking is fully implemented in 6 states. The 2022 question answered against current facts. The classic PDS critique was leakage, diversion, ghost beneficiaries, and exclusion of migrants. So three of those four have been substantially addressed by digital infrastructure, and the fourth has been partly reversed. Biometric authentication at 99.6% of fair price shops closes the diversion window. Database integration removed 2.12 crore ineligible beneficiaries, and one nation, one ration card makes entitlements portable. So, what remains? Three things, and these are the current challenges worth writing. Exclusion by authentication, the first one, when entitlement requires biometric verification, a failed fingerprint, a failed fingerprint is a denied ration. The technology that fixed leakage created a new failure mode at that margin. And it fails it and it falls hardest on the elderly and on manual laborers. The 2011 census base coverage is circulated on 2011 population. 15 years of growth are not reflected, which mechanically excludes people the acts people the act's own percentage would cover. Nutrition versus calories. The system delivers cereals efficiently. Dietary adequacy requires protein, micronutrients, and diversity, which is a grain centric PDS does not supply. The third point connects the food security answer, the nutrition answer, and it is the direction reform is heading. So, food inflation and an answer whose factual context has changed. So, the 2024 question have asked about the causes of persistent high food inflation and the effectiveness of RBI monetary policy against it. So here we discuss what digital rebuild did not fix. These three. First one, exclusion by authentication. Second one, 2011 cents base. Third one, nutrition versus calories. So the classic critic, these are the classic critic. So then we are moving to what? Food inflation and answer whose context has changed. So read the question in 2026, and the first thing to notice is that factual context has fundamentally changed. Note the wording carefully. Persistent food inflation remains a legitimate economic phenomenon, and the 2024 question is analytically valid. What changed is the contemporary context, not the question. So food inflation in 2025 declined steadily through the year and entered deflationary territory from June. October 2025 recorded the largest monthly decline in the present CPI series at minus 5.02%, say the series qualifier. In the present CPI series, not all time. Cereals fell from 6.2% in January 2025 to minus zero point 0.4 in December. Vegetables were deeply negative for much of the year. Pulses fell continuously for nearly 9 months, and spices remained in deflation for 18 months. So, how to answer a question whose factual context has changed? Do not pretend the 2024 framing still describes 2026, and do not simply announce that it does not. Do both jobs. First one, the structural causes of food prices volatility, which have not gone away. Supply inelasticity in the short run, weather and monsoon dependence, perishability without cold chain, thin markets for pulses and oil seeds, fragmented supply chains with multiple intermediaries, and periodic export and stock restrictions that add policy uncertainty to price uncertainty. Then the current position is those structural features produce volatility in both directions. And 2025 demonstrated the downside. Food prices fell sharply because supply responded. Vegetables, pulses, and cereals all eased. And then the monetary policy conclusions, which the reversal strengthens. Food inflation in India is predominantly supply determined. Supply determined. The 2025 disinflation was driven by output, not by demand compression. This confirms rather than the contradicts the standard position. The policy rate operates on demand, and demand is not what moves food prices in India. So monetary policy can anchor expectations and prevent a food price shock from becoming generalized inflation, which is a real and important function, but it cannot address the shock itself. That requires supply side instruments, storage, cold chain, market integration, and stable trade policy. That is a better answer in 2026 than it was 2024, because the evidence now runs in both directions. On APMCs, the 2014 question, the charge was the Agricultural Produce Market Committee impeded agricultural development and contributed to food inflation through mandatory routing. Licensing that limited buyer entry. Commission and market fee layers and cartelization among licensed traders. The counter argument deserves equal space. So APMCs also provide price discovery, weight management standards, weighment standards, dispute resolution, and payment security, and the regulated mandi is what farmer falls back on when a private buyer defaults. The reform question is not abolition versus retention, but whether alternative channels can supply those four functions. Then we are moving to subsidies, distortions, and the WTO. The 2023 question asked for a direct and indirect farm subsidies and the WTO issues. The 2013 and 2017 questions asked about distortion. One architecture answers all three. What is that architecture? Direct subsidies reach the farmer as an income or price support. PM-KISAN crop insurance premium subsidy, interest subvention. Indirect subsidies reduce input cost, fertilizer, power, irrigation, water, and credit. The fiscal scale, budget estimates 2026-2027, food subsidy 2 lakh 27,269 crores, 629 crores, fertilizer 1 lakh 70,781 crore, of which urea is 1 lakh 16,805, and nutrient based 54,000, PM Kisan 63,500 crore, modified interest subvention 22,600 crore, crop insurance 12,200 crore, PM Asha 7,200 crore, and major subsidies overall fell from 1.9% of GDP in financial year 22 to 1.2 in financial year 25, budgeted at 1.1 in financial year 26. How subsidies distort? Three transformation channels, and this is the 2017 and 2013 answer. One, crop mix. One, crop mix. Subsidizing water and power favors water incentive crops, and subsidizing urea disproportionately skews the nutrient ratio and degrades soil response. And second one, input intensity. Third one, regional allocation. Input intensity, when an input is priced below cost, it is used beyond the point where it adds value. The third one, regional allocation. Subsidy benefit follows input use, which follows irrigation, which follows green revolution geography. So support is largest where need is smallest. Now the WTO boxes, amber, blue, green boxes. Amber is trade distorting support, subject to reduction commitments and de minimis limits. Product specific support such as MSP linked procurement is assessed here. Blue is production limiting payments exempt from reduction. Green is minimally trade distorting. Research extension infrastructure, decoupled income support, and public stock holding for food security subject to conditions. Comes to the Indian disputes in substance. The Indian disputes in substance. First one, the external reference price problem. Amber box support is measured against a fixed external reference price based on 1986-88 prices. So 3 decades of inflation make India's support appear for larger against a 1980s benchmark than it is real terms. India's position is that the benchmark, not the support, is the distortion. The second one is public stock holding. India procures at MSP and holds stock for food security. Developed members argue this is market price support countable in the amber box. The Bali Peace Clause of 2013 provides interim protection, and a permanent solution has been negotiated for over a decade without conclusion. The connection worth marking, that is the direction of travel is from price support toward income support, price support toward income support, and the WTO logic is one reason why. Decoupled income transfers like PM-KISAN sit in the green box. MSP linked procurement does not. So the shift that is domestically attractive because it reaches farmers who cannot access procurement. It is also the shift that is externally defensible. Two different arguments pointing the same way is a strong basis for a way forward paragraph. And DBT replacing price subsidy, the 2015 question, for and opposite against it. For it eliminates leakage, it eliminates leakages in the input chain, restores the price signal so the input is used efficiently and reaches the farmer rather than the manufacturer. And against it requires accurate land identity cards, transfers price risk to the farmer, and demands working capital because the farmer pays market price upfront and is reimbursed later. The national DBT record is strong, about 3.48 lakh crore of leakage savings over a decade, with coverage up roughly 16-fold from 11 to 1 to 176 crore. But fertilizer DBT remains a partial case since payment flows to the manufacturer on sale rather than to the farmer as cash. Then we are moving to the next scene, that is crop insurance credit. What is the crop insurance and what is the credit here? Crop insurance. Crop insurance credit and the livestock margin. Crop insurance, the 2017 question. PMFBY's design is a uniform low premium share for the farmer. 2% Kharif, 1.5 Rabi, 5 for commercial and horticulture crops with the balance shared by center and states. No cap on the government subsidy. The insurance unit at village or panchayat level for widespread calamities, and technology for yield estimation and calm settlement. 12,200 crore in budget estimates 2026-2027. The persistent criticism, delayed claim settlement disputes over crop cutting yield estimation, late state premium shares and insurer withdrawal from high risk districts. And the structural point is the insurance scheme whose claims are settled late fails at exactly the moment it exists to work. The farmer needs the payout before the next sowing, not after it. Comes to the agricultural credit. The 2014 question. The honest position is cooperative credit institutions has unmatched last mile reach and member proximity, and persistent weakness in governance, capital adequacy, dual regulation, and political capture. The constraints across all institutional lenders are the same for collateral against small and often united holdings, high transaction cost per small loan, absence of credit history, and the mismatch between crop cycles and repayment schedules. How technology changes it. And this is the part that dates best. Cash flow based rather than collateral based assessment, land record digitization, reducing title verification cost, and electronic negotiable warehouse receipts enabling post harvest pledge financing. The credit guarantee scheme, the credit guarantee scheme for ENWR based pledge financing targets small and marginal farmers, women, SC/ST, and Divyangjan farmers specifically. Interest subvention is 22,600 crore in budget estimates 2026 and 2027. Comes to the livestock and the pink revolution, the 2015 and 2013 question. Why livestock matters economically? It generates income daily rather than seasonally. US family labor, including women's labor, require little or no land, converts crop residue into value, and functions as a liquid asset that can be sold in distress without losing productivity capacity. Productive capacity. So then, what? Productive capacity. It is the single most important non-farm rural income source and the most equitably distributed because the landless can own animals, measures breed improvement, veterinary and disease control coverage, food security, fodder security, organized procurement and cold chain, and kisan credit card extension to animal husbandry, The livestock health and disease control is 2010 crores, and dairy development is 1055 crore in budget estimates 2026 and 2027. And the pink revolution specifically carry a qualification hygiene and disease surveillance in slaughter and the processing, effluent and waste management, and social and regulatory sensitivities that vary by state. So state the case and the constraints, do not advocate. So India guarantees a price to some farmers and a grain to most citizens. What it has not yet guaranteed is income. What are the most probable questions from this chapter for 2026? First one, food inflation in India moved into deflation during 2025. What does this reveal about the drivers of food prices and the limits of monetary policy? Why this question? Probable. 2024 asked about persistent high food inflation. The factual context has changed, not the premise, and UPSC rewards candidates who know the current position. The second one is India's food security architecture has largely solved leakage but not exclusion. Critically examine. So, why PDS was asked in 2022 and 2019, and the digital rebuild has changed what the honest critic is. And third one is India holds food grain stocks far above buffer norms. Examine the physical and market consequences and what would resolve them, and why buffer stocks were asked in 2024 and at 2.73 times the 1st January norm. This is the sharpest checkable. Then we are moving to next chapter, that is eighth chapter, food processing and agricultural supply chains. This is going to discuss in the next chapter, next class. This is going to be discussed in the next class.